In 1203, two sculptors were given an assignment that should have taken years. They finished it in 69 days. What they produced in that time were two wooden figures, each standing over 8 meters tall, carved from hundreds of individual blocks of Japanese cypress, assembled and joined with a precision that has never been fully explained. The figures guard the Nandaimon Gate at Todaiji Temple in Nara, Japan, the largest wooden gate in the country. Itself a structure of extraordinary scale, and they have stood there on either side of that entrance for over 800 years. They are called the Kongo Rikishi, and despite 8 centuries of study, there are things about them that nobody has been able to fully explain. The first thing most visitors notice is the scale. Each figure occupies a wooden cage within the gate structure, positioned so that anyone approaching the temple must pass between them. They do not face forward. They face slightly inward, toward the path, toward the person entering. Their eyes follow you. Their expressions are directed at you specifically. One has its mouth open, the other has its mouth closed. This is not decorative. The open mouth produces the sound ah. The closed mouth produces the sound on. Together, in Japanese phonetics, these two sounds, ah and on, represent the first and last sounds of the Sanskrit alphabet, the beginning and the end, alpha and omega, in a different tradition but with the same meaning. Everything that exists in language, in thought, in the universe, contained between the open mouth of one figure and the closed mouth of the other. That is what you walk between when you enter Todaiji. Unkei and Kaikei were the two sculptors who made them. Both were masters of the Kei school of Japanese Buddhist sculpture, a tradition that had spent decades pushing toward a new kind of realism. Figures that looked less like symbols and more like presences. Bodies with weight, faces with expression, muscle and tension rendered in wood with a specificity that had not existed in Japanese sculpture before them. The Kongo Rikishi are the fullest expression of everything that school had been moving toward. But 69 days. The figures are assembled from a technique called yosegi zukuri. Multiple blocks of wood joined together from the inside out, hollowed as they are built, the exterior surface carved and refined as the structure grows. It is a technique that distributes the work across multiple hands simultaneously, which is part of how speed was possible. Unkei and Kaikei did not work alone. They had teams of assistants, apprentices, craftsmen, but the scale of coordination required, the precision of the joinery, the consistency of proportion across figures that are over 8 meters tall. The quality of the surface carving achieved in that time frame has been studied by art historians and structural engineers, and the conclusion is always the same. It should not have been possible in 69 days. Nobody has explained how it was. During a major restoration in the 20th century, the figures were carefully examined from the inside. What the restorers found had not been recorded in any historical document. Sealed within the hollow interior of each figure, placed there at the moment of construction and never removed, were thousands of small objects. Miniature Buddhist figures carved in wood, rolled sutras, sacred texts written on paper and sealed into cylinders, offerings of various kinds, placed in specific locations within the body of each guardian. The practice of placing sacred objects inside Buddhist sculptures was not unusual, but the specific selection of objects inside the Kongo Rikishi, which figures, which texts, in which locations within the body, has no complete parallel in any other known sculpture. Scholars have proposed interpretations. The objects inside correspond to specific regions of the body they occupy. The figures are not simply guardians of the gate. They are containers, vessels holding a sacred interior that nobody was ever meant to see. But the precise logic of what was placed, where, and why, and what the complete program of objects was intended to achieve has not been fully decoded. The people who placed them inside in 1203 did not leave a record. And 800 years later, the interior of these figures still holds things that have not been fully explained. The figures were not always this color. Originally, they were painted. Vivid pigments, reds, greens, blues, applied over the carved wood surface in a way that made the figures look less like ancient objects and more like living presences. Traces of that original paint remain in protected areas, visible under analysis, showing what the gate would have looked like in 1203 when someone approached it for the first time. The weathered, unpainted wood surface that most visitors see today is not what Unkei and Kaikei intended. What they intended was color, motion, an approach to the gate that was not quiet or reverent in the way a stone sculpture demands reverence, but immediate and almost confrontational. Two enormous painted figures, eyes directed at you, mouths forming the beginning and end of all language, at the entrance to one of the most sacred sites in Japan. That version of the encounter no longer exists. The paint is gone. What remains is still extraordinary, but it is a different thing from what was originally there, and we have no complete record of what the original looked like in its entirety. There is a question that runs through every scholarly attempt to fully explain these figures and never quite gets resolved. The Kongo Rikishi exist at a specific intersection. They are guardians. Their function is to protect the temple from malevolent forces, to stand watch, to project power and threat toward anything that might approach with the wrong intent. That function is clear and well documented in Buddhist tradition. But they are also vessels, containers of sacred objects, of texts, of offerings. Their exterior is threat and power. Their interior is devotion and prayer. The same object is simultaneously a warning to what approaches from outside and a prayer directed somewhere else entirely. Whether that duality was consciously designed, whether Unkei and Kaikei intended for the interior and exterior of these figures to represent two different and complementary relationships with the sacred, or whether it is a reading that later scholarship has imposed on objects whose makers had simpler intentions, is something the figures themselves cannot answer. The people who built them in 69 days in 1203 are gone. The documents that might have explained the specific choices made inside and outside these figures either never existed or have not survived. What remains are two enormous wooden presences at the entrance to a gate in Nara. One mouth open, one mouth closed, still forming the sounds that bracket all of language between them. 800 years later, we are still standing between them, trying to understand what we are looking at. I would love to know what you think in the comments. Whether you see these figures primarily as guardians, as vessels, or as something else entirely that the scholarship has not yet found a name for.